are starting in Turkey, where you've been hearing all about the fact that they've had a general election and most ballots have now been counted.
With more than 99% of ballot boxes opened, no presidential candidate has yet managed to pass 50% of the vote.
After a record high turnout yesterday, nearly 89% of eligible citizens voting, people are going to be headed back to the polls again on May 28th.
The world is watching and waiting for the results of an election that's being called the most important one of the year. Hi, welcome to About That. I'm Lauren Bird, in for Andrew Chang. Not only is this a pivotal moment for the future of Turkey, its outcome stands to go a long way in shaping global politics. Voters went to the polls yesterday, but so far there's no clear winner, and it looks like a runoff election is likely. The race now is between two men who would take Turkey in very different directions. And for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, this election poses a significant threat to bring an end to his 2 decades in power. He became prime minister in 2003 and then president 11 years later. And if he loses this battle, he's not expected to give up power easily. Running against him is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. He's the leader of the Republican People's Party and has been leader of the main opposition since 2010.
We will fulfill people's longing for democracy. That's the biggest change, and it won't only be seen here in Turkey, but by the whole world. We will bring true democracy to this country.
This is something that has resonated deeply with Turks, and especially young voters who have only known Erdogan as leader.
I want to see a country that is more democratic, where people live in prosperity and have more freedoms.
I want a Turkey where people are more tolerant and can accept each other's differences. There is a huge number of people who really want things in this country to change, and this election might be the last chance.
Voters say they've largely lost confidence in Erdogan for a few reasons, including that he's weakened the strength of the legislature and the free press.
If he wins another term, I think Turkey will degenerate further into an authoritarian regime. If the opposition wins, however, I think Turkish democracy will have a shot.
Since last July's failed coup, the authorities have shut down scores of media outlets and arrested more than 100 journalists, accusing them of terror links. Now, there aren't many voices of dissent.
There's also been a lot of anger over his response to February's earthquake that killed 50,000 people. Many people felt that it was too little, too late, and that the government wasn't prepared to handle it. And that frustration was also felt amongst Kurdish people, who make up the biggest ethnic minority in Turkey.
20 yıldır ne yaptı da bize ne vaat edebilir? Vaat edebileceği, verebileceği hiçbir şey yok.
Belediye valla evimiz yıkılmış, yarısı gitme, yarısı kaldı. Bir odamız kalmış. Devlet değil, buradaki HDP yaptılar partiler.
And now Kurdish people who have long felt sidelined by the ruling government are said to have a crucial role in this election. Some experts have even speculated that Kurdish people could decide it. Turkey is also in the middle of a huge cost of living crisis. Inflation is sitting at 50% right now.
Inflation reached 85% when the government cut interest rates at the end of 2021. In a year, the lira has lost more than twice its value compared to the US dollar.
So, as we wait to find out who will be the next leader of a country in political and economic turmoil, we want to take a look at what's at stake in this election for Turkey and the rest of the world. Let's start with Turkey's role in NATO. Turkey has been blocking Sweden's entrance into the alliance for nearly a year, since it applied after Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Sweden's application has yet to be approved by NATO members Turkey and Hungary. Ankara has accused Sweden of harbouring groups it considers pro-Kurdish terrorists, which Sweden denies.
Kılıçdaroğlu says he would end the veto on Sweden. His chief foreign policy advisor has said if you carry your bilateral problems into a multilateral organization such as NATO, then you are creating a kind of polarization with all the other members of NATO with your country. Also at stake, Turkey's role in the war in Ukraine. Turkey has been a kind of middleman in the war, supplying drones to Ukraine on one hand, but it hasn't sanctioned Russia. Turkey was critical in brokering a UN deal last year that allowed Ukrainian grain exports to pass through the blockaded Black Sea, And while Erdogan has suggested becoming the first NATO member to host Russian President Vladimir Putin, Kılıçdaroğlu has pushed for more distance. The outcome of this election will also determine how Turkey deals with Syrian refugees. Roughly 3.6 million Syrians live in Turkey. And as the country grapples with the cost of living crisis, hostility towards Syrians has grown. Both candidates have vowed to send Syrian refugees home.
The government has had to deal with rising anti-refugee sentiment, which has been made worse by the economic crisis.
And both Kılıçdaroğlu and Erdogan want to help rebuild in Syria, build homes and schools and develop the economy there to encourage people to return willingly. But many Syrians who have fled the war have been living in Turkey for more than 10 years and don't want to go back to Syria.
It insists any returns will be voluntary, but these reassurances have done little to calm fears.
Syrians know that Turkey is among the few countries that opened its door to them, but now, because of some people in society, they're facing discrimination.
Turkey has wanted to join the EU for more than 20 years, but talks haven't gone anywhere since 2018. Last year, the EU said Turkey was moving further away from EU standards. The human rights concerns and Turkey's neutral stance in Ukraine were part of the problem. But Kılıçdaroğlu says he's been campaigning for change and Europeanization in Turkey with the goal of unfreezing those talks with the EU. So those are the stakes. And for more on how this will unfold, I want to bring in Sinan Jidi. He's written about Turkish domestic politics and foreign policy. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He joins me now. Hi, Sinan.
Hi there.
So what's your reaction to this result today?
Well, it was a stunning sort of drama that unfolded in the early afternoon, our time here on the East Coast. And it appears right now that President Erdogan is poised to pull off something that many sort of observers didn't foresee, which is a sizable lead over his main opponent, although he has not clinched victory to serve a third term. What has happened is the country's election board has basically confirmed that it will go to a runoff. So they will face each other off on May 28th to decide who will be president. But many sort of pollsters as well as analysts basically predicted a wide margin of victory for the opposition candidate, which just didn't come about. And unfortunately, you know, from my perspective, I'm looking at this as the opposition came to a gunfight with a knife, and the authoritarian trappings and advantages of incumbency was used to the maximum effort by President Erdogan last night. And his party, and they're very close to essentially crowning their achievement in the weeks and days ahead.
Can you explain that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
So, you know, look, there was some expectation that there would be an election, people would go and vote, and then the boxes would be opened, and essentially we'd tally the results and declare a winner. What we started to see yesterday is basically a lot of disputed and contested sort of ballot box counting, vote tallying, and publication of these results. There's widespread confusion amongst the opposition, suggesting that, you know, all the pro-opposition votes for Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu were not adequately counted and represented and do not reflect a reality of who actually won or the actual position of the opposition. So the opposition's main grief is that, in fact, Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu was ahead and Erdogan lost, whereas we're seeing that opposite playing out in the media. But that's to be expected. I think Mr. Erdogan and the party has used all the pressures that they can put upon institutions such as the election board to actually get the result that they want, which is a hair's breadth short of victory. Erdogan got close to 50%. 49.4%, I think, was the last count against Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu's 44 or 45%. The opposition is claiming the opposite, but they just cannot prove this, or, you know, other than the court of public opinion, which is disappointed. And what we're seeing is a widespread sort of celebration by Mr. Erdogan and his supporters. And they're going into a second round on May 28, very much sort of emboldened and encouraged, thinking that they might actually win this again.
And so what is going to happen there in that runoff election?
So there's a widespread sort of disappointment inside of Turkey by half the citizen population, at least, who's, you know, very hopeful that this would be the time that Mr. Erdogan will finally lose. And now that sort of sort of disappointment is going into a runoff election. And Mr. Erdogan seems to have sort of recollected himself and momentum going into this. So the opposition alliance under Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu has a lot of hard work to do.
Yeah, well, we will keep an eye on it for sure. Tina and GD, thank you so much.
Thank you.